Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower clear.
But other sightings apparently were taken more seriously.
And one in particular, an incident called the Rendlesham Forest Incident, also known as Britain's Roswell. This was in 1980, shortly after Christmas, when a few American airmen who were stationed in the UK reported seeing a UFO.
A huge, solid, diamond-shaped object they described as 100 foot long, hovering silently in the sky above them.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
Understands UFOs are real. This is a technology that is so far beyond anything that we have.
Reportedly appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics, appear to demonstrate advanced technology.
ARROW is the culmination of decades of DoD, intelligence community, and congressionally directed efforts to successfully resolve UAP encountered first and foremost by U.S. military.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Disclosure Team here on YouTube. Thank you so much to everyone for being here in the live chat. I really appreciate it. Please keep the chat cool, calm, collected. You always do, so I appreciate that. Now, before I bring in my guest today, who I'm really looking forward to speaking to, I am joined by a guest co-host, somebody you are all familiar with. So let's bring in Sean Rash. He's on mute.
If you don't know, now you know.
Good to see you, man. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. And that intro, I must say, like, holy cow. I make a lot of them, but none of them have been, man, that is just like, I want to get some popcorn and relax and watch the show after that. That is awesome, dude. Good job.
I appreciate that. It is a bit long, but it gives me time to sort of compose myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, so here we are, man. This is going to be a great conversation, and I think we should really just jump straight into it. So everyone, please welcome back to the show, Tim McMillan. Tim, how's it going?
What's going on, man? Yeah, I'm glad Sean brought it up, because the whole time I'm watching the intro going, wow. I don't want to offend anybody and say that it's one of the best. How about that?
You're sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. I think it's definitely an awesome intro, and I feel bad that I probably don't have anything better to say that'll live up to that quality, but I'll try.
It's going to be good, guys. But listen, we had some kind of big news, or I certainly woke up to the news of this, the medical records of David Grusch being leaked to The Intercept. So I really did, I'm sure everyone wants to hear Tim's views on it especially, but so let's jump into that, Tim. Like, what were your initial thoughts on it? I know you've been communicating a bit on Twitter with some thoughts, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, it was pretty stunning. When I first saw it, I like you, over here on European time, so I wake up a couple hours after it's broken, but at first I didn't know what to say, and I will say this just to qualify it, that I do know, for beyond any reason of a doubt, that a reporter from The Intercept did reach out to David Grusch, did ask a litany of very specific questions that really was not related to a single source document. So it's not just like one, somebody leaked a single document, but rather like somebody leaked a file of different disjointed documents. And I was like, wow. So I know that did indeed occur. However, as of this recording, The Intercept has not published anything. So a couple of thoughts go through my head. First thing, obviously, we have the debrief. I run the debrief. So I run a media outlet. So the first thing that went through my mind is this is not something we would run no matter who it is. Sure. Just because, I think it crosses a real red line, in my opinion, of what's ethical journalism, what's ethical. And it doesn't matter who it is, even if it's somebody you don't like. And so take David Grusch's claims aside. I'm like, this is really low, man. And because I think it truly, I think for me, one of the most distressing things, I know for a lot of your viewers and a lot of people I saw online, is the impact it has on UAP whistleblowers or even David Grusch. For me, I thought the paramount concern is I'm thinking, man, how many other people, and I have a lot of military friends and family, how many other vets, how many other people who have PTSD, how many other people who have who struggle with mental health issues? It's not a big deal. And but how many people is that going to negatively affect? How many people are not going to get help because they're afraid it'll come back to bite them? And so I'm like, that is just really bad. I'm editing myself there, but it's really bad. And so I was stunned to see that it would be published. We don't know if it will be. And then obviously I was stunned because, you have a gentleman here. So his claims aside, I'm sure we'll talk about his claims, but his claims aside, one of his core claims that he has, testified to under oath. He has stated in writing under penalty of law to the Inspector General is that he's faced reprisals and repercussions. He testified under oath that he was aware of information campaigns that could possibly be targeting against him, and then you have it like happen. And at first I thought, okay, well maybe somebody, some low level, somebody that had access to something, just leaked his records. So somebody at the police department, somebody at EMS, somebody at maybe the VA, something like that. But then when I saw kind of the list of questions that were asked him, I'm like, wow, this is a file. This is, I've gotten records from this agency, and that was kind of stunning because that kind of narrows the scope now. And now I don't think, at first I thought maybe it was a little presumptuous to start throwing around accusations of the intelligence community or whatever. But honestly, based solely on the questions that I saw asked, if that information was obtained, it does kind of narrow the scope over who have that much information on hand to hand out. So it's it's disturbing and shocking right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people who have suffered some sort of mental illness don't feel very good right now either. It kind of hurts all of us because we're kind of all in that same boat. I don't mind, admitting that I've had issues with that in the past, and I've dealt with, stigma because of it in the past at real professional places, and it's not good, and it hurts, and it affects the rest of your life. As far as what you just said is seeking to get help. Maybe you won't now because you don't want to deal with that, or somebody may find out, and then your credibility is shot. But let me ask you this: like, why do you think after Sean Kirkpatrick's letter, after this happening, how are people getting away with basically bashing a lawful whistleblower?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily have an answer. Obviously, you brought up Kirkpatrick's, which is a good point. That's something still kind of, I haven't let that go because that was extremely irregular. I went on to say, unprecedented. I stand by that. I don't have a precedent of a senior official doing that. And so I think it definitely really borders on the Hatch Act and violating the law of what officials could say and do. And so typically when you see that happen, and so from the journalist side, people leak information for a multitude of reasons. They always have their motivation and intent. And it really marries well with my kind of former career because we dealt with informants and in policing and everything. And so the same principle applies. People give you information for different motivations and intent. And when you're leaking privileged information or you're publishing a scathing rebuke of Congress and a whistleblower, a lot of times you're doing that where you already have an impression that you have some top cover, is what we're saying. That means that it's against the rules, but you already know that your bosses are going to like what you're doing. And you're not going to get in trouble for it. And even if there is an investigation, it's really going to be de facto and kind of it's going to just be a theater, you know. And so that's kind of my general impression, especially when you're talking about these files where there's medical records, there's 911 transcripts, you know, all this stuff. Wow. If it would seemingly be relatively easy to kind of track that down if you were going to put forth the effort. But for somebody to leak that would suggest that they believe they have some top cover for it. And that comes in a variety of ways. You know, that comes often informally, where it's, you know, the boss. So the director of operations for the CIA is ranting about how pissed off he is about Grusch's testimony. And he says, man, I wish somebody got a hold of those files, you know, his medical records and blah, blah, blah. And that's all it said. You know, nobody's like, all right, we're going to put a plan in action. It's kind of blessing off on it.
And you have some like young go-getter possibly who hears that and takes it upon themselves to maybe do it, you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, that kind of stuff exists. And in my opinion, that this really crosses another line though. And Grusch used this phrase in his testimony, and anybody who's followed me has heard me use it multiple times over the years, even going back to Louis Elizondo and everything, which is administrative terrorism. And it's a very frequently used word in government, even local city governments. But this crosses the line from administrative terrorism. That's really kind of pain in the ass harassment. This is, this to me is really reckless. It extends beyond it, and it's disturbing that it happened, and it'll be disturbing if it goes to print, because it's very, 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 very unfortunate. And I think it's something that will has the potential to negatively impact a lot of individuals, not just UAP related. Like if you want to discredit him, at the same time, you have to wonder, why are you doing that? Like if what he's saying is total nonsense, if what he's saying is BS, well, then the proof is in the pudding. And I think that's the other frustrating side. And I'm sure some critics, although I want to applaud some people who are typically very critical of the UAP topic, being really responsible and to this. I haven't seen some of them. Some of them have me blocked on Twitter, but I will.
Me too.
One of them I'll note is Jason Colavito, who often is very critical. And I have an interesting relationship with Jason. I don't dislike him. He can be a little hyperbolic, but I noticed his comments I thought were very, very good. He was saying, this doesn't materially change anything he said. Why would you do this? He criticized Ross and News Nation for not first putting it out, or,
of course,
but he's got to play to his audience, but he was responsible with it. And so, why would you do that if there's nothing to what he says? The proof's in the pudding. Just
that's it.
Refute what he's saying. You don't take down the witness. And I think my biggest advice to anybody who would want to see that information and think that speaks to the testimony he's made is to do a lot of research on whistleblowers in general. So your Chelsea Mannings, your Edward Snowden's, whatever. If you looked into them, they're very flawed individuals. And I'm not saying David Grusch is flawed. I've had a lot of conversations with him, been very impressed by him. But if you look at it, if you look at some of the biggest names in whistleblowers, you'll see they're very flawed individuals. The name escapes me, but one of the big ones from the Deutsche Bank whistleblowing thing actually died of a drug overdose last year. They're flawed individuals. The information they're saying isn't wrong. And so, it's easy to kind of discredit people, but it's the information that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had Tim Bichette come out today and say that he's going to enlist the help of the Oversight Chair, James Comer, and Speaker McCarthy to actually find the leakers. So they're really raising this to a high-profile public kind of spectacle, let's say. I mean, could that lead to some higher repercussions for the individuals?
It could, and I hope it does. And like I said, I think this, in my opinion, crossed a line. Kirkpatrick, I can see getting away with what he did. Really? At first I thought, geez, I can't see how he gets away with that. And there's I have a couple schools of thought there. One could be he's like, screw this, I'm out the door anyway. I don't care anymore. I'm going to retire soon. So there's not a top cover situation there. It's just he doesn't care. But you can see how, first of all, it's really hard to get fired in government. I don't know if people realize it. They just shuffle you to a new job, but it's really, really hard. But this one really crosses a line, I think. And I mean, it crosses the line. And I mean, anybody who doesn't take it seriously, I would say, well, then fine, let's leak Tim Burchett's medical records. Let's leak, anybody else's. Why not?
How would you feel? Yeah.
Right. I mean, they just sentenced 2 people to 19 and 20 years in federal prison for providing medical information on soldiers to Russia for espionage. I mean, so you're in effect, though you're not directly providing it to Russia or China or Iran, if you're going to publish it publicly, you are. And so, I mean, we have precedent for it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned there you don't think Kirkpatrick's seems to be that bothered anymore in a way, like he's almost out the door. Do you think we're going to see some change in Arrow maybe before the end of the year with the new National Defense Authorization Act being signed?
I know that's the rumor. I don't know. I have a weird, interesting love-hate with Kirkpatrick at times. I did not like his letter that he did. I thought it was very unprofessional. I thought it was ridiculous. And again, was like, look, man, I know he's received a lot of criticism, but I'll say after the hearing, I didn't hear anyone criticizing Arrow and him. Right. So I'm like, Jesus, I had to rewatch it before I wrote the article about it. And because I was like, what the hell did they say that made him mad? And so I thought it was unnecessary. And in my opinion, it would seem that you have the high ground. If the idea of what he's saying is total nonsense, you have the high. Somebody wants to testify that Tim McMillan's part of a vampire tribe or whatever. I'm like, have fun, buddy. Like, I don't need to. I'm not gonna get mad about it. Like, total nonsense.
That guy's weird. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, who cares? And so I wasn't a fan of that, but there's other aspects of things that he has said and done that have made the UFO people mad, and frankly are definitely multiple steps back from what David Grusch has said exists. But I do think they are correct steps. And I also count Kirkpatrick as the person who, no matter how skeptical you are, his testimony actually is the one that really provides you that clue that the government has compelling evidence. And that comes from when he testified and said that, he said he had very serious concerns. He got very serious in his tone. He took on a real disturbed demeanor and restrained himself. He wanted to say more, but it was an open setting when he said that he was extremely concerned that some foreign adversaries may have made significant technological advancements. Well, full stop right there. That tells you they have seen evidence of significant technology. So that's kind of that cornerstone that I'm talking about, where it's let's all agree and really firm up beyond a reasonable doubt, objectively say the data is real. Like, here are advanced, apparently technological devices of unknown origin. That's no longer in debate. It's not a seagull. It's not a distant plane. That's what we're going with. And so his comment there, interestingly enough, given his other comments, should be really compelling to all the people who are like, oh, it's all birds, planes, and whatever.
Yeah, and on top of that, you go back to his ABC interview. Like, who is kept up at night by the threat of extraterrestrial technology if there's no reality to it? It's like, I can't sleep because I'm thinking of werewolf ants. That's not a thing. So I would never have that issue. So
absolutely. I mean, and that's a real concern or interest of people, I will say, with inside the intelligence community and Department of Defense. And I know that's that's a point of contention in the UFO community, is the idea of a threat, and it's the Space Brothers and everything. I take a different tone where I look at it and think, and I just published an article yesterday about aliens, speculative science of extraterrestrials, period. So all these scientists I spoke to in different papers, and the general consensus if there is life out there, an intelligent life, there has to be some that are hostile. because if there's an infinite universe,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, it's one of those things that I agree with you. That interview where you talk about keeping up at night, and those are the things that you look at that and go, okay, he's seen some stuff. He maybe is taking a really tempered approach and saying, I can't prove it's aliens, but okay, long as we can all agree that the data is real, that there are some stuff, and we're not debating about seagulls and distant planes. Well, now we got now that cornerstone's there. That's important. But your overall question, I don't know. I would say 60-40, he's out before the end of the year.
Okay. I mean, do we know if he's been working under Title 50 authorities yet?
No. I mean, to my knowledge, he hasn't received that. So obviously there's some hampering there. There's some other hampering. Obviously, he does a little bit of show and dance, which he's a bureaucrat and been in the game long enough. So he held a director, DJ2, as director of intelligence for Stratcom. He knows the system, so he knows how to say, we're doing great. We got all the money publicly, because his bosses, to keep them happy. But there's certain things he's not going to have access to. One of the specific things that David Grusch couldn't talk about openly in the hearing, but you'll find it in the new Schumer amendment, relates to the Department of Energy and the Atomic Energy Act. And so that's like a whole other can of worms that nobody would have access to on the DoD side, but I think is extremely relevant, because I think a very valid case can be made for why the DOE would perhaps take precedent and lead. If you actually had material, like David Grusch says, why they would take a lead on that. I think there's some really, if you look at their mission, there's a valid case there above the DoD.
Sure, and they could intertwine their stuff with, non-proliferation kind of operations and such, and how they're able with the DOE to basically have stuff classified however they feel fit. If they think that this technology could be a threat to national security, they don't have to tell anyone about it. And that could be what we're talking about.
Yeah, they don't have to tell anyone. They don't have to tell the Secretary of Defense. I mean, the Secretary of Defense doesn't. If he said, "Hey guys, I want to get the plans to make a nuclear bomb," they're going to go, "Sir, you have absolutely no need for that information," which he doesn't. What are you going to do? Build one in your basement? And so there's certainly applications, and so that's where I don't lose my mind when you hear people like General Miley, the Joint Chiefs, or people go, I don't have any of that information. They're always very. If you pay attention, they're always very guarded with their words. It's always like, I don't have any information related to materials recovered from a craft. He's not saying, I don't have any information. There's some UFOs out there. We've seen them and we know that. He's talking about materials. And that very well could be because it falls into an arena that's not the DOD's. In a weird way, it might make me feel better because the DOE, though they control nuclear weapons, they're more of a scientific and research-based entity. They're not as inclined to be like, all right, so how do we make a weapon out of this? Whereas the DOD definitely would be.
But does the DOE not have oversight like the DOD?
Oh, yeah, they're supposed to. So, I mean, if they have been involved in it, they have not been reporting like they should be. I'm not sure if this last amendment or the next one will really kind of close all of these loopholes. So like all of the people who could go, hey, man, you didn't tell us to report. I don't know if it's been fully closed yet, but it will be if provided this current legislation passes, where you can say, hey, you guys didn't report that. But they certainly are, and that scope continues to kind of narrow down, though. So it could be very limited to just a very small select group of senators. And at the end of the day, not everybody has access. We saw that with the problems they had getting into the SCIF before the hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, would the DOE potentially speculatively have worked with outside contractors as well? If this program that Grusch talks about exists and these witnesses from it who have spoken with him, could it be in this gray area between sort of government and aerospace?
Sure. I mean, 95% of the DOE is civil service as it is.
Right.
Very, very, very small portion is military because there's really no need for the military in it. You know, they kind of control the nuclear weapons and nuclear research, but it's not inherently a military or defense agency. And so, sure, yeah, they definitely work with contractors. They definitely do all of that. The DOE holds the honor of being the only agency to ever call me on the phone after a FOIA request. Really bizarre. They called me and wanted to know, why did I submit a FOIA for UAP to them?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, because there's literally like books written about UFOs and nukes and all. Like, I mean, it was,
yeah.
And they wanted to know it, and they actually tried repeatedly to talk me out of it, basically saying, so what you're saying is you want us to forward this to the DOD. And I'm like, no, what I am saying is, and then, I mean, we hung up the phone and they emailed me and said, just to confirm, you wanted us to forward this to DOD. And I'm like, no, I want you to look.
It's like a sales trick.
It was. They were trying to sell me the extended warranty on the car. And then only to come back and be like, oh, we didn't find anything. And I'm like, but it was weird. It's the only one I've ever had that called me, just cold call me, and literally their question. I've had them call me and say, hey, can you help us narrow down your request? Like, what might you be looking for? Where should we check? But I've never had one go, why did you send this to us?
It never ceases to amaze me how every time the government has an opportunity to deal with the public on this topic, whether it's a one-on-one individual or through like a mass media thing or something, they always find a way to act guilty.
Astounding, Sean. And
Right.
I said this, I have been one who's been extremely skeptical of the crashed material story, the Wilson document. I still get flack from that. For being skeptical of that. I have one, but I just said today, I said, man, if the government doesn't have anything, they sure as hell know how to look guilty. I mean, down to the stuff that I haven't reported on or hasn't been reported on yet. I just haven't had time, but stuff like multiple defense contractors after the Grusch hearing. So different contract companies held security stand downs with their employees where they never said specifically because of the Grusch hearing, blah, 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 but they just reminded their employees of their NDAs or their security oaths, not to be talking to people, and that even some congressional people aren't cleared, like these big stand downs. And this is multiple companies that had it. And then as is, I mean, this one's even, I don't know what to make of this, but if you were to call right now and call Lockheed's media affairs or Northrop Grumman or any of them and said, hey, there's been these claims of crash UAPs and blah, 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 blah. Do you have any comment on that? They would forward you to the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not a yes, but I can't tell you?
Or just a no. If it's a no,
Right.
it's a no. But why are you forward? I mean, can I at the debrief, if the next, like Vinny, when you say, hey, Tim, you want to come on the show, can I say, Vinny, I'm going to need you to go through the DOD public affairs office as a private company? Like, why are you handling public affairs for private companies? First, you can't unless you do have contracts. You do have contractual agreements with them. So what the, it's such an easy, like, no, we don't have any of that. That's silly. Thank you. Bye. But
yeah.
Do that.
Especially with the prevailing stigma on it, it'd be so easy to just say, no, what are you, crazy? We don't have time to answer these emails. Leave me alone. Like, and they could get away with it. Yeah, probably. It's
not like I can go and physically search every Lockheed facility,
Right.
So if they tell me no, the most I can do is say, hey, everybody, Lockheed said no. That's what they're saying. So it is an easy no. That's what's so weird that just say no. But then to have the government acting as the spokesperson for private companies on one topic, that's super weird. I mean, that doesn't happen. If I want to talk to Raytheon or Lockheed about the new fighter jets or something they've come out with, I mean, hell, they send us press releases and say, hey, do you want to interview our CEO for this and this? But with this, like, no, you got to go talk to them.
Right.
Why? I mean,
Yeah,
that shouldn't exist.
If you sent an email about the B-21 Raider, let's say, just as an example, and you asked about something that maybe was classified, would they send you to DOD, or would they say, I can't tell you because it's classified?
The latter. I mean, and they have done that before.
Yeah,
There's certainly plenty of times where I've talked to different companies all across the spectrum. So Battelle or different people who are doing different work. And I've said, hey, I got some questions about this. And they'll say up front, hey, we're really limited in what we can answer because we're under security obligations from the DOD. But, if you send us some questions, we'll, get them through. It just adds an extra layer. Like typically they'll send it to their subject matter expert. They'll answer it. They'll let a security officer review it real quick, make sure they hadn't said anything they're not supposed to, and then get it back to it. So there is this process for doing it when you have contract. It's not, oh yeah, call Susan Goff's portfolio is massive. She covers private industry, the government. I mean,
yeah, I might call her. Yeah,
she's the world spokesperson.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of contractors, we've seen this proposed legislation about the past and present contractors providing Arrow. They have 60 days to let Arrow know they've got these materials, 180 days to provide it for analysis, and then Arrow 30 days to tell Congress. But how on earth can this be enforced?
I don't know right now. I mean, obviously you'd have to prove it. We could, somebody mentioned this on Twitter, and I said, man, they're right, where we could have the most interesting and frustrating disclosure with a big D, which involves the U.S. legal system, where you have these people fighting in court over this stuff, but not acknowledging that it exists, but not refusing to do this and that. And it's like, that would be, it would certainly not be the disclosure people want, but I absolutely could see that happen, down to the fact, I mean, in that legislation, they specifically say they will exercise eminent domain to take this stuff. That's really interesting, because eminent domain is a legal term that you has a definition that has to be applied, and some of them is they have to provide you with like an above or fair market value for whatever they're seizing. Well, how the heck do you quantify a flying saucer? How much is that worth? And they can only apply eminent domain for public good. So you would have to be able to prove you have to prove to a judge that whatever you're giving, Lockheed, is a fair and honest price. And you would have to also substantiate that it's being taken for public good. So it's really interesting there. That's another one of those ones where I'm like, oh, we're going to see a fun legal battle that goes out with everybody going, it's not real, it doesn't exist, we're just going to court.
What are you guys fighting over? Yeah. We just don't like each other.
Yeah, we're just
how do you see this happening? Do you think we'll actually, I know it's speculation, but do you think there actually will be a big D disclosure? And if so, how would you see that playing out?
I don't know, man. It's such a difficult question. And it's because it brings in, there's so many thorny avenues to it. And I try to tell people that is that there's a lot of really, really prickly areas here, down to the fact that what we're talking about fundamentally, if you're going to disclose this, is you've also requires the government to come out and go, we've been lying. We've been lying for a long time.
Yeah.
But we still want you to trust us. We still want you to pay your taxes. We still want you to vote for politicians and the president. That's tough. Like, trusting government is paramount. I mean, that's, the government rules by the people. And so it's a toughie. Like, how do you bring this out without completely shattering the fabric of your democratic society?
Totally.
And so, for that alone, it's one of the ones where I could go, well, I can see how this could be something. You only need one to start the process. One that kicks it off and adds this, and each one subsequently is like, I'm not like, this is a shit sandwich. Like, give that to somebody else. Like, we'll let the next guy deal with that, because this is a nightmare. Right. That's, how do you? I always said the easiest way is to be like, rediscovery. be like, we
Right.
found this. It just crashed. We found
Yeah, and
it.
if it's that advanced, you'd have no idea, right?
Right. And it's one of those weird ones where there's lots of these instances in life where you're like, I don't really believe that, but okay, I'll play along. You're like, nobody says, yeah, no, I think you've had that for years. Maybe there's even a stamp on it that says 1947, but you're like, okay, just crashed. Cool. Tell us all about it. That's certainly one way. I think it's an interesting conundrum, but it's one. I mean, I have so many questions. These are kind of the fun thought experiments that. How would you disclose this? How do you? I've talked in doing an alien article, talking to the SETI scientists and NASA scientists. Is like, how do you disclose even if you find conclusive proof of extraterrestrial life? All of them. I think they would, make that readily available. But then what? Like, do we go try to contact them, and then what? What if they come and kill us all? Like, there's a lot of who decides this? Because if the outcome's bad, everybody's going to blame the person who decided this. So, like, who decides for collective humanity that, all right, guys, we're going to go contact the aliens, win, lose, or draw? And so there's a lot of we're talking about deep questions.
A Twitter poll. Should we make contact?
Perfect.
I mean, what point will we see the White House or the executive branch get involved a bit more?
Question.
That is a great question. I mean, it is shocking to me that you haven't had somebody. I've been very disappointed with the White House pool, that you haven't had some White House reporter just say, hey, we had this hearing the other day. What do you guys have comment for it? I mean, I would have expected the White House would have been prepared for it, but that never came up. It was very weird. And I don't know. I mean, you would think that, especially because the president is the only one who has that carte blanche authority. It doesn't matter whether it's the Department of Energy, it's the DOD, it doesn't matter where the hell it is. The president says, do it. Well, there you go. It's, there's nothing you can do. And so I would hope, but it's not even been broached with them. It's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Almost like it's intentionally done. And that's speculation, but I know I just read a story where they revoked like some 200 press passes or something like that for those press conferences. So you never know.
Well, there's certainly, I mean, I'll tell you from the media side of it, there is certainly not necessarily a conspiracy of collusion here, but rather unspoken lines that aren't crossed in what you publish. We saw that when we published Grusch's claim. If you read a lot of the media responses and everything, or even the pundits, the mainstream pundits who were talking about it, they were, who is the Debrief or this little known outlet and everything? What? That would publish this. We had crossed a line. Like, it was okay to talk about UAP sightings. It was okay to talk about Congress. When you start talking about crashed material, hold on, which we're just reporting what this dude said under oath to the IG. I'm reporting what he said. If it had been a whistleblower saying that President Trump was peed on by prostitutes, it would have been the headline of every international news outlet. What's the difference? And so, but it was a good example of what you're saying there, Sean, that there are these red lines where you just know, you're like, we're not supposed to cross this. And it's weird. It's weird. But we see that in science too. I see that. I mean, we report on science, and I joke with a lot of these researchers. I'm like, you could spend a career pontificating on string theory and not be able to prove anything and everything. But if you were to say, I think we should look for interstellar probes, people are like, they lose their mind.
Especially with how big the universe is, it's like, it almost seems silly to not look for interstellar probes. I mean,
we do it. This is not a logical jump of faith. We send probes into deep space. Could someone else not do it? And so, it makes you have to go, all right, guys. I want to point out that 600 years ago, Bruno dared to say that Copernicus was right and that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, and they burned him at the stake. They were just reporting observations, people. Maybe we should just Because again, that one to me, I think is really astounding. Because we do a lot of that as the backlash received for we should be looking for interstellar probes. They're not even talking about UFOs here. They're saying we should look for it, and people get mad. And I'm like,
yeah,
we do it.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
yeah.
I mean, where does this story go from here? We've had the big Grusch revelation, the bombshell story. We've had the House hearing. Do we need Senate hearings? Do we need, we've heard rumors that some of these direct whistleblowers who worked on the program may come forward. I mean, it's easy to say that, but is that what we need? Are there multiple avenues that can keep the ball rolling?
Well, yes, and there should be. I mean, that's my whole point of where you can't just outright dismiss what David Grusch is saying because he's testified it under oath. And so what you're saying, if you just outright dismiss it, is that there is nothing significant about saying, I swear to tell the whole truth. We should just dismiss it whenever we want to. So next time you're in a court trial and you hear a witness say they're going to tell the truth, be like, I don't like that guy, so I'm not going to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it's supposed to work. So you have to. And again, I stress that I do believe that David Grusch believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
Sure. And so we need to know why. So whether if he's been intentionally misled, if they're crazy hypothetical, are defense contractors engaged in some kind of illegal money laundering where they've pretended it's UFOs to siphon off extra cash and they've run this little secret show? I mean, something's going on. And I think some of the lawmakers have really expressed that. AOC was good about this, saying something's fishy here one way or another. And so, it would, I know it's been discussed, but of having a commission or a committee, a temporary committee that's set up just for this. So you bring in different politicians of different sides of the aisle, different subcommittees, you give them subpoena authority. So, the witness list that David Grusch has or anybody else, when he's talking about hostile witnesses or cooperative witnesses, you just subpoena. You don't, you don't show up, you go to jail. Next. Yeah. And we've seen this happen. This just happened in the United States when they did a lot of the trials related to President Trump. They did this commission. They sent some of his people to jail for refusing. So it's there. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, just get to the bottom of it. That's the thing, is this is a story that has lingered for 80 years. Why? Let's just get to the bottom of it. And if there's no crash materials and we need to go back to that cornerstone of, but there are weird stuff going in the sky. Okay, but let's end the chaos, because right now it's way too chaotic.
Yeah.
I would hope to see that. It would be remarkably bizarre if suddenly lawmakers were like, nah, we're not going to do any of that. In fact, we're done with it. Then I what the heck's going on here? So I would hope it continues to be pushed.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd like to talk about individuals offering free legal representation for UAP whistleblowers on Twitter specifically.
Yeah, he reached out to me privately, and I, Clint, if you're listening, I apologize. I wasn't ignoring you on purpose. He's very, very nice in his message. Saying, can we all get along? But I think, anyone should be suspicious of that kind of stuff. Anybody who just pops into that, the specific individual that we're talking about there has a very long history of, really regurgitating Kremlin talking points and Russian propaganda, in my opinion. And so be extremely cautious about that. Particularly, I think it's important to always understand at the heart of this as well, besides just UAP, all of these individuals who have come forward or are talking about it, whether it's Lou Elizondo, in this case, David Grusch, they are career intelligence officers. Some of them, I know for a fact, have been targeted in the past by foreign intelligence. And so there is another foreign intelligence component to all of this. And it's certainly something that I'm sure they're cautious of, and everyone should be cognizant of as well.
To me, it's so transparent. Okay, so all of a sudden you want to jump in basically and check it out for Russia to see what the truth is behind this. And that's about it.
it's a low cost, low hanging fruit operation for GRU. They're
say,
military
no, big deal.
intelligence. Yeah, because they go, hey, we can find out what's going on with the UFO stuff in America, and or if we've got other military employees that come forward and they're blowing the whistle on this, we can probably get them to talk about other stuff too. We can, we're recruiting agents, and so you're like, hey, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Low cost for us. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really suspicious. I would hope that no one who had any legitimate information would be like, hey, there goes my new attorney.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give a quick shout out here. Sorry, to Baba 200 says, thank you for all your hard work, Tim. Thank you, Baba, for the donation.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of whistleblowers as well, just after we saw the David Grusch story drop, Dr. Greer held his own little mini hearing conference with his own whistleblowers, and a lot of people got really excited by that. Not me personally. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Did a lot of people get excited? I don't know. That was so. The nice thing about us is we ran the. When did we run the David Grusch story on? Like a Tuesday or something?
Yeah, it was a Monday or Tuesday, I think. And then,
okay, yeah. We ran it on a Monday, and then the following, or did I leave that Monday? No, it was the following Monday. Either way, the following week I was in Mallorca for a week, so I was like checked out of all of it. So I missed Stephen's his disclosure hearing, and when I came back, nobody was talking about it. So I actually, until you just mentioned it, I had forgotten it had occurred. So maybe it did get a splash. I didn't hear about any of his witnesses. It certainly didn't seem to have the same impact. Certainly didn't come into our orbit with anything kind of revelationary, which is, I think that for the most part, he's kind of burned himself, considerably as being taken seriously, and so but he's another one. He's kind of like David Hasselhoff, who was big as a singer in Germany. You'd be surprised the foreign audience that Stephen Greer has, the non-English speaking foreign audience. I have people all over the world that reach out, hey, do you know about Greer's? I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. No, that's kind of one of the kickers to me actually about Greer is he talks so much about people trying to not let this stuff get out, and he's being strung by his ankles and he can't do so much or whatever. But he's like one of the most popular guys I've ever seen in the UFO community. He's got like millions of views. He comes out with the movie. It's on Amazon the next day. Like nobody's trying to muzzle this guy up. So to me, it. Putting on my speculation hat, I'm like, well, maybe somebody doesn't mind you out in the field, making it seem a little ridiculous,
Right. Well, he certainly got some backing from somewhere. I mean, that was, It's funny because I still get tagged in it. I posted, I didn't even write an article. I posted on Twitter his financial records from his nonprofit, which were all public, as they're supposed to be for a nonprofit. But just pointing out some really fishy things like drawing a salary, but then paying a management company solely owned by you. So kind of double salary. But that his nonprofit was started by a single donation of almost $1 million or something. And it's like, where did that come from? Who did that?
I got time for one more question, Vinny.
Of course, mate. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Is there any scenario that you can think of, Tim, where someone's working on some highly sensitive classified stuff, and for whatever reason, they have to participate in an IG investigation? Would there be any scenario you could see where they would have to lie about that sensitive classified stuff to the IG? Or at that point, no matter what it is, do they have to be honest about it?
They're supposed to. So at that point, they are supposed to be honest. The one thing I will say about the IG, in my experience, is they're very by the book. They're very straight and narrow. You'll notice, even going back to like Lou Elizondo when he filed his complaint and everything, you didn't see any leaks from that. You didn't see any, like right now we have no idea what's going on and David Grusch. Like, there's not going to be any leaks out of that.
True.
They're public affairs. I've had a good time with them. They're funny, but like they won't even confirm stuff on background for me until it's time. Like they're really straight and narrow there. And so they're supposed to be a separate, detached entity, and they're supposed to. Is there mechanisms in place that could provide someone with authority to lie or mislead them? Yes. And I think the number one being the power of the executive order from the President of the United States. The President of the United States signs an executive order. I don't think people appreciate how much power it is. The best example would be Area 51. Every president since Bill Clinton has signed annually a executive order that exempts Area 51 from the Constitution. You go into constitutional no man's land.
I had no idea about that.
Oh yeah, it's a everyone. And imagine that you've gotten Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, and now Biden. So some of them diametrically opposed politically, but they've all signed it every year, renewing it. That's why back when they had the storm Area 51, I was saying, "Hey, have fun, guys, because you're about to enter no man's land." But this goes back to, if anyone wants to look into that, it goes back to the lawsuits over the Area 51 employees and the chemical burning that they were doing there. So they were court ordered by the Supreme Court to disclose what they've been burning for medical treatment. And the president signed an executive order at the last minute saying, nope, you don't have to, even though the court said it. So technically, if there was a presidential executive order, you could. And I don't know how you get around that other than the president.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, something else that I've been pondering on now for months is the February shootdowns. Why have we still not seen anything? We've heard that people have seen it and they're like, yeah, there's no reason why this hasn't been made public. Like, what the hell?
I'm with you. And I've spoken to people who would be in the know of that information. They've assured me that there wasn't anything spectacular to them. But I'm with you. I mean, that's such a bizarre time frame. Like that week is such a bizarre point in time where for the first time in history, the U.S. government was firing off missiles over its airspace. And then it was like, all right, we're done, everybody. They shot down, 3 or 4 of them in a week. And then they killed them all? Like, there's no more? Like, there's no more? And then everything was like, all right, we're done. Like, there was no video. It's such a bizarre, so bizarre.
This whole thing is wild. Everything.
So weird. Nothing is normal. I've probably said this on your show multiple times, Vinny. UFOs are undeniably anomalous because nothing around it works like it's supposed to. The senior officials and directors suddenly issue scathing LinkedIn posts, and you're like, why are you doing this? This is unprecedented. People shoot things down and they don't, and everybody, the media, I guess that's why I don't have, to your point, Sean, I don't have White House credentials, because I'd be the one every day like, hey, can we please? They even shuffle it around. The White House is like, oh no, yeah, that's the DOD, which the DOD is probably like, thanks a lot, because the White House is the one who's saying don't share it. So they're like, thanks, guys.
But we were getting these Russian jets buzzing the Reaper drones and stuff and seeing that footage clear as day. I mean, come on.
Within 24 hours.
Yeah.
We're getting
And the Chinese balloon, we got a good picture of that. Not video,
right.
but yeah.
They even shared the video, the cell phone picture taken by the pilot proudly.
That's right. Yeah.
And I mean, they shared it proudly. And I mean, I remember I was live stream remotely at the press conference, and they were like, somebody asked like, oh yeah, that photo is authentic. In fact, we're going to publish it and give it to you guys. But these, they're like, no, oh, we misplaced them. It's extremely weird. It is extremely weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we go, Tim, we've got a couple of questions from the audience members. Baba here,
Sure.
with another donation saying, also shot down over Canada. Absolutely, yeah. Flotilla asks, what if Bill Nelson and NASA came right out and said, we see these things coming from deep space? In a month, they have a report.
It would be exciting. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I will say, don't expect that from this report. I have talked to people who are involved with this report, and just so everybody's expectations in order. This report is actually more of a, this is what we think needs to be done in the next stage. Like, is the UAP topic something that NASA should be involved in and looking into it? It is my understanding that the recommendation is yes. And the recommendation is that they need to gather more data and everything. But this is not going to be, this is not going to be a report, to the best of my knowledge, that is going to provide any additional information. So please, everybody, don't go trying to burn NASA down, because it is my impression that a lot of the individuals have walked away from it going, yeah, no, we should. We need that cornerstone I talked about. I know everybody's not happy about it, but there's enough here that we think we need to validate the data, and let's do that. And so it's a good thing.
Completely agree. I got sent a question privately today from somebody in Germany. It says, I'm a German citizen. Now, the German government's official position is that they are or were able to identify all objects flying in German airspace. There are and were no unidentified cases. What is Tim's assessment of that position?
That comes from me, actually. That was interesting, is that I'm the one who, an article that I published, it was after the balloon shoot down, some March or something, on the Debrief, is that I went up and talked to the German Department of Defense, and it was really interesting because they're very nice. They were really open to it, and I know a lot of the German researchers were really shocked because they did talk to me about an answer, and they said that they detailed the process they have for UAP reporting, and said, oh yeah, we've had this since 2001, and here's where it goes, here's where the reports are filed and everything, and this was all news to everybody in Germany. But when I said, okay, wow. So, but they said, but we've been able to explain everything. There's absolutely nothing. And I said, wow. I said, that's impressive, because the DOD appears to be struggling. And so I know a little bit about the German intelligence services and everything, and they're not thought highly of, they're behind. They've kind of been neutered some. And so I'm like, that's impressive. What could you teach them? And I said, well, great. Can I see some of these reports? Like, where, like, I don't know. Is there a FOIA for in Germany? Like, where can I see them? Like, oh yeah, no. We once we explain them, we obliterate them. Like, we just get rid of them. I'm like,
okay.
That's really impossible to explain them all, and that's why we're kind of here in this conundrum, right?
Right. It was such a bizarre. So yeah, they said we explained them all, and when I said, can I see those reports? How did you explain them all? This is great information. They said, oh yeah, no. Once we explain them, those records no longer exist. Like, we have computers nowadays. Like, this is not, you don't have to
put them in
your file cabinet,
the burn pit.
Right. And so I don't know that I really trust that, but that's what they said. And I said, well, I did ask them, well, did you share this information with the U.S. or allies? Like, this is, we're not going to talk about that. They said, we don't talk about sharing. Okay, so fair enough. But
interesting.
I was surprised because so much is NATO done here. I mean, most of their airwax and everything is handled by NATO. Right here at Ramstein, it handles all the airspace and air defense. And so I was surprised that they didn't just go, oh yeah, we defer all that kind of stuff to NATO. And so
I wonder what NATO has.
Yeah, I've tried them. Once you get, you think about once you've got one government, you see what you have with the UK when they're like, we're not talking about it. And then you've got the US. Well, now you just add all these other nations, and it's very easily. I asked everybody in NATO individually about I think Romania responded and he gave me like a canned answer. Finland, I think, Finland was the best. Finland mailed me a typed letter response that was signed that basically said, you need to talk to this person.
Wow.
I was like,
that's a lot of work.
Like, hey, I just emailed you. You could have just emailed me. They did. It was in English, you know. They typed in the whole thing. And it was like 3 weeks after the article came out. I was like, we could have expedited this, but all right, cool. Yeah.
Wow. So, Tim, last question before I let you go. Are you able to tease us with anything that you're working on at the moment that you may be seeing on the debrief in the future? Part 4?
Fun. Oh, man. Part four is when we're going to roll the alien bodies out. That's going to be fun. Disclosure. We're always working on some fun stuff. I'm trying to think of fun UAP stuff because that's what we're here to talk about. And that's the thing is you notice that I get derailed in all sorts of fun science and tech stuff because there's a lot of cool stuff that's out there. And so, but all that said, obviously, the claims that Grusch has made, they bear investigation. They bear being responsibly investigated. That takes time, but that's certainly something that we're working on collectively. And because I guess nobody else is. Well, at least the ones with the big budgets that can fly their reporters around and or already there, like Washington Post could walk out their door and interview people, aren't going to do it. So but I do think it bears. We need some resolution, either. And I've said this from the beginning, either there's a lot of people with a lot of high level responsibility and authority who are out of their mind crazy. And that's not a good thing. Or there's something to what's going on here. We just I think we should want some resolution. I think that is perhaps more important than some of the stuff that we see covered more frequently.
I agree.
Yeah,
that's just me.
Nah, that's cool. Well, listen, Tim, thank you so much. I really appreciate it as always. It's been a great conversation. Sean, I really appreciate you being here to co-host.
Thanks, man. It was a pleasure.
Anytime, man. And then everyone in the live chat, thank you so much. I apologize if I missed any questions. That was just such a good in-depth conversation. But guys, please join me next week. I forget who I'm with. Go and check out my social medias, and I'll see you back here next week. For now, everyone, take care. Goodbye.